Hey guys, welcome to the third and final video in this phone photography series. Hopefully you watched the first video all about camera basics, you've seen the second video all about photography basics, and now we're on to the third video all about editing basics. I have been excited for all of the videos, I know, but this one I'm extra excited for because editing for me was the one thing, and kind of continues to be the one thing, that really surprises me about photography. And my hope is that by the end of this video, you start looking at photos that you've taken, maybe some that are kind of like, meh, that's not the best photo, but whatever, and you look at it as like, whoa, that can be turned into something. I want to talk about three things before we dive in. The first thing is that editing takes time, and there's no real workaround for that. I mean, you can definitely get into a little bit of a flow and have a good system set up, but no matter which way you cut it, photographers who edit their photos have to upload, edit, export, and then share it if they're sharing on social media, or upload it to a website or send it to a client. Like, there are just steps involved when you edit, which is a little bit of a challenge for some people who just want to take a picture and post it. You're just going to get that photo. But if you want to actually start enhancing and editing your photos, it is going to take a little bit more time. But don't worry, with just knowing some of the basics and maybe using a preset or two, we'll talk about those, you'll be editing quicker in no time. The second thing is that I'm going to be using a lot of editing words here, a lot of photography jargon, but don't be intimidated by that. All of the terms are really common amongst all the editing platforms. So whether you're using Lightroom, VSCO, Snapseed, we'll talk about those different apps in a minute here. The editing words that I'm going to be sharing with you guys are on Instagram too when you go in to edit your photos. So whatever you see here when we talk about highlights and shadows and exposure and temperature, it applies to almost all of the editing platforms. And the third thing, like the other two videos, this video is meant to be very interactive. I actually want you to do these steps, the things that I'm suggesting to you, along with me. This is meant to be interactive, and I want you to get used to actually going in and editing your own photos. I think that's all I wanted to share with you guys before we actually break this down, so let's go ahead and get started with editing basics. So the first thing I want to talk about are the different apps that you can download to help you edit your photos on your phone. If apps are already like, whoa, way too much, don't be intimidated. Even when I take a picture just on my camera, it has a little automatic filter that it will enhance my photo with. So even that right there is a little editing tool. Also, when you go to upload on Instagram, they have their own editing capabilities. You can see the different filters that you can use. You can also go into edit and change the color, the saturation, the highlights, the shadows. So that right there is its own editing tool. So those are pretty basic that a lot of people are at least somewhat familiar with. But the three apps that I would recommend to help edit your photos are Lightroom, Snapseed, and VSCO. I use, and for this tutorial I'm going to be showing you the different editing techniques using Lightroom. It's what we use for our professional photos for our business, so it's what I'm most familiar with. But you can go ahead and research and use whatever editing program best fits your needs, you're most comfortable with. So I'll start off by showing you what Lightroom even looks like. So if I get into it here and I go up to my photos, you can see that these are just some of the different photos that I have uploaded into Lightroom. These editing apps are great because they give you control to help edit your photo, but they also allow you to use presets. Presets have certain settings that when you click on them, your photo, every time you click on them, your photo goes to those settings, and then usually you can edit them from there. But here, I'll just show you in my Lightroom an example. So I have these different photos uploaded, and if I go into them and scroll on over, you can see presets. Click on that, and I'm in the creative bunch. There's desaturated contrast, cool light, turquoise, and red. So let's click on that. So that, when I click on that preset, any photo that I apply this preset to, it's going to use those exact same settings. Presets are great because they save you time. One click and your photo goes to those same settings every single time on every single photo, and it really gives you a uniform color theme. Most photo editing apps come with their own presets, especially like the three that I mentioned, but you can also find presets on Etsy. A lot of influencers sell their own presets, so if you see an influencer, someone on social media, you really like their look, their color theme, they might sell that preset so that you can just apply those same colors, those same settings to your own photos. So go ahead and look into that yourself. And now for the fun part, we're actually going to start editing our photo. I'm going to show you what the different editing words mean. Again, I want you to do this with me. So go ahead and download one of those apps, or if you have Instagram, you can do this alongside me as well. Like I said, they have most of them there. But I'm going to show you guys exactly what each of these features do. And the best way that you can see these work is to go extreme. Go all the way up, drag it all the way down, and see how your photo changes. changes. Okay, so first thing, I am going to get into Lightroom and I'm going to select my photo. So here's the photo I'm going to edit. It's of my sister and my cousin biking around Mackinac Island. If you've never heard of Mackinac Island, check it out. There aren't any cars there. You get around on bikes, walking, or horses. It's awesome. Anyway, so this photo is great. I mean, beautiful scene. Look at the water, the green trees behind it, the clouds in the sky. I mean, it's okay, nothing special. It's pretty dark, but what I want you guys to see is the difference after we edit this. Like, I think you're going to be shocked, and hopefully it gets you thinking about some of the other photos that you've taken that you're like, meh, that's a fine photo. It doesn't at all capture what real life looked like. But then you can go in and edit it and make some changes and bring it back to life. So the first thing, and we talked about this in the first video, camera basics, is to straighten your horizon. So because this does have a landscape, you can see the horizon over there on the water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into crop and straighten. This has an automatic straighten tool for me. I love it. You can also see down below rotate left, rotate right, flip. I mean, you can do all sorts of changes in these editing apps, but there's my straighten. I can also manually straighten it if I actually want to. And then up here, if I just click on the back, the undo, it will obviously undo my changes. So there's my straightened horizon. Perfect. And then I'm going to show you this because it's right there and you might like to use it, and if not, you can always go back and undo your changes. But go ahead and press auto and see what that does. It automatically edits my photo. Whoa, that even looks better. If I click and hold it, you can see my before to after, and that's just with auto. I obviously want to show you guys what this looks like, and I would still make a few changes. So I'm going to go to undo so I can show you guys all of these other editing tools. Okay, so let's get into light, and you can see exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, and there's more underneath. Again, you're going to become more familiar with these the more you go in and practice and learn them and see what each of them do. But first on the list, exposure. We talked about exposure in the first video. Remember, we pointed our cameras at a light and tapped to focus and get the exposure, and then we went up and it made it brighter, and we went down and it made it darker. Same thing here. So when I take my exposure to the right, you can see it makes my photo brighter, way too bright. And when I go left, it makes it darker, way too dark. Okay? So exposure, you can manipulate, you don't have to, it's totally up to you. I like to go all the way up and all the way down to see what these different tools do, but for the final edit, I don't recommend going so extreme. Contrast adds a little bit more dimension to your photo. It makes the darks darker and the lights lighter. So you can see if I take my contrast all the way up, that obviously that increases, and all the way down, it gets a little bit softer. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of contrast. A very general rule of thumb is highlights down, shadows up, okay? So you can see when I take my highlights down that those bright areas, now we're on to our highlights and our shadows, which we talked about in the first video. So if you watched that one and you watched the one on photography tips and now you're watching editing, all three of them together are gonna help you take really great photos. So let's see what raising the highlights does. You can see those bright areas get really bright and kind of blown out. Bringing them down brings that detail back into the sky. Again, you can do whatever you want. I typically almost always bring my highlights down just a little bit. Again, same things with shadows. You can lift them up so you can, oh, look at those beautiful faces of those two. Look at how much of a difference that makes. Or take them way down so your dark areas get darker. Typically, I go highlights down, shadows up just a little bit. And in this case, I'm actually gonna raise them more because I want to see their beautiful faces. Wow, I raised that a lot, but that is okay. You know what? I can always go in and change that if I want to. So we're on to whites and blacks now, and this is where things get a little bit tricky and can be overwhelming because they all seem so similar. Whites and blacks are very similar to highlights and shadows, but they're not the same. Obviously, whites deal with the white areas and the blacks deal with the black areas, as opposed to the highlights deal with the bright areas, so more than just the color white, and shadows deal with the darker areas, so more than just straight black. So go ahead and do the extremes, see what happens when you go all the way up or all the way down for both of them. I'm not going to dive too deep into this because I want you to go see it for yourself. I don't mess with white or black too much unless it's a snowy photo and I want my whites to be that pure, brighter white, then I'll raise my whites a little bit. But typically I don't change my whites or blacks too much. But if you want to start using them and you think that they would make your edit better, go ahead. First thing I want us to look at is white balance. We talked about photos being either cooler, those bluish purples, or warmer, those yellow oranges. White balance tries to identify the natural colors in a setting. So it wants to identify the whites as being that pure white, and then all the other colors being natural from that white setting. So you can see if I go in and press auto, so it automatically changes the white balance. I don't love this warmer color. I actually like it a lot cooler. I'm going to keep it as shot and edit it from there. Sometimes I use the auto and I love it and I'm like, ooh, that looks a lot better. And sometimes I just go in and manually edit it myself. So the temperature, the warmer and the cooler, you can see when I go all the way up on that warm side, oof, it gets way yellow, and if I go all the way down, it gets way cooler, that blue. So somewhere, I again like this photo on the cooler side. I love those greens and the teal water and the sky behind, so I'm gonna keep it close to the center. Tint has to do with how much green or magenta is in a photo. I never thought about green or magenta in a photo before I got into photography and editing, but you can see when you go all the way up how it changes your photo, and all the way down on the green side, again, just how it changes. I rarely change my tint unless it's necessary. Vibrance and saturation, everyone's favorite. I definitely, when I started editing photos, overuse these. Sometimes I still do, but they enhance your colors. And they're also very similar. Vibrance increases the muted colors in a photo, and I think it looks more natural. So I almost always have a little bit of vibrance on my photos, but you can see if you go all the way up, wow, and all the way down, it almost turns black and white. Same with saturation, except saturation changes the overall color of a photo. I rarely use saturation. Again, I just generally use vibrance more, but you can see when you go all the way up with vibrance and all the way down. Those are fun. Those are fun ones to try and edit and find different ways. It's tempting to be like, ooh, look at those blues, look at those greens, wow. But that's not quite real life. So go ahead and use them to enhance your photo. Heck, you can do whatever you want, but I would just suggest taking it easy and not going so extreme. And now we're going to get really fancy. Hold on for this one. You guys are going to be impressed with yourselves. If you follow along, you're going to be like, whoa, at least that's how I was. So go ahead and go to mix, and you can see your Roy G. Biv colors plus an extra one over there. But what this does is it gives you control over the individual colors on the spectrum. So let's go to blue because it's such a part of this photo. Now these colors are by each other for a reason that goes beyond what I'm going to explain here. But your hue, see when you go to the right, the blues turn more purple, and when you go to the left, they turn that more teal, that indigo color. Hue changes the actual color, the actual blue, to be more purple or more indigo. So same, if I go to green, see when I take the hue to the right, those greens become more of that indigo, that different colored green, and when I go to the left, they definitely go more towards the yellow. So hue actually changes that color to go one way or the other. Again, we talked about saturation in the other edit, but if I take my blue saturation up, look how the blues change. They become more colorful, way too much. I mean, look at those clouds. But you can see how they change, and then if I bring them all the way down, they again almost become like black and white. They become lifeless. I took all the saturation, all the color out of them. So same if we go to greens again, all the way up, those grasses get really bright, and all the way down it's just lifeless back there. And the last one, luminance. I am not going to lie to you guys. This is a phone photography basics video, and luminance confuses me. I've looked it up, I've used it to edit because I've gone in and practiced and tried it myself. I'm just going to show you what it does. If we go to the blue, take luminance all the way up, and take it all the way down. Luminance can be effective. I rarely use it, but again, if you guys are like, oh my gosh, I love all this stuff, I'm so intrigued, I want to know more, go ahead and dive way deeper and get to know hue, saturation, luminance way better. That's what I want to do here for you guys, is just make this approachable, make this somewhat easy, and be like, oh, that's what all those things mean. Understanding the color mix and how to use it also has a lot to do with the color themes that we talked about earlier. So remember the Dreaming Out Loud, how she had teals and oranges, like that was the color theme of her Instagram profile, of her grid. It didn't have hardly any greens, any purples, any magenta in it. So hopefully seeing that color theme helps you understand that she probably takes her oranges all the way up, cranks them up, the saturation and the teals up, and actually takes the saturation of the green down, as well as the magentas or the purples or the colors that she doesn't want, that don't fit that theme. I found that to be really interesting when I started editing, because for me it was always like, like more and more and more, each color a little bit more. But when I found out that you get those color themes by going less, I was like, you're telling me less is more? And the last one I want us to look at is effects. We're not going to talk about split tone, texture, or dehaze, but two that I do use often on the effects tab are clarity, so you can see all the way up. Clarity isn't great for faces or portraits because it just makes it so like sharp, too much texture, and if you go way down it makes it way too soft, but it can be a really cool tool. So I do usually add just a little bit of clarity to all of my photos. And then also vignettes. So you can see if you go right, it makes a vignette, a little like kind of circle oval around the border of your photo, and then if you go left it goes darker. Vignette is cool if you have a specific subject kind of in the middle. You can, you know, make your border darker so that the viewer's eye goes straight to that subject. I don't usually do too much vignette, but it can be a powerful tool if it's used correctly. You have more control over the raw images, but just for phone photos, I don't really use sharpening. So let's go ahead and reset this picture to what it looked like when I first imported it, and I am going to edit it real quick and show you guys what I come up with. There it is, guys. Okay, this is not gonna focus, but oh, there is the photo. I am so excited with how it turned out. Isn't it crazy? Look at the before and after. Like, that is insane to me. Just look at how much that actually changes. Look how much you can manipulate your photos, change them. Manipulate isn't a bad word. It just means change them or enhance them. Like I said at the beginning, if you think a photo is dark and gloomy, you can make just some minor adjustments and really bring it back to life. So I hope you guys were able to see why I was so excited to share editing tips with you, because you have so much control. And it really is one of those things that when you start noticing it and how it works, you'll see other social media, websites, photographers, and how they use different colors, different color themes, shadows, highlights, and just different editing tools to create their own style, which means that you guys can create your own style too. The main thing I hope you guys take away from this video series is that you can do it. You don't have to be a professional photographer. You don't need a big, fancy, expensive camera. All you need is to go out and practice. Go out and take photos and try new things and move and do the rule of thirds and turn your grid on, and then go edit your photos. Actually upload them, edit them, export them, and share them. Share them with the world. Wow, I obviously feel very passionate about this. I don't know, I just think that we all are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for, and that new things are really intimidating and scary to try, but once we can just kind of understand them and dip our toe in, like, we realize that they're not so hard after all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the series. Thanks so much for being a part of this. Be sure to subscribe, like, share with a friend, do all the things. I just so appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to be here with me, and I hope you have yourself a great day. I don't know what I'm doing here. Alright, we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!